Good morning. My name's Kerry Kaplan. I'm here with Swami Chaitanananda for the next segment of News from the Heart. It is a privilege for me to be here, and I'm going to try to ask a question or two and stay out of the way. So, good morning.
Hi, Kerr.
Hi. You and I have had a series of discussions for a very long time about corporate America and how we in our community function within that. And I think you're aware that recently in the corporate world, mindfulness is everywhere. I mean, literally, it's a huge topic of how corporations can help people function. About 2 weeks ago, there was this huge article about the CEO of Aetna Health Plan. He apparently was skiing, had a near-death experience, and now they call him like the CEO guru or something. He's set up from the highest levels of the organization all the way down mindfulness training. So I had been reading about, corporate mindfulness programs, and this hit, and since then there has been incessant chatter in Providence. Health Plan is doing it for docs, because you're going to be shocked to hear this. Docs are not happy. And they're not in touch with their bodies, and they can't be in touch with their patients because they can't be in touch with, And I find it ironic that 45 years later, after doing this, that it's now really mainstream. I wondered at this stage how you felt about our culture and how all of this is seemingly coming around.
Well, it's really actually kind of interesting and nice that the topic of mindfulness is starting to get some big play. It's Buddhist-based, and some wonderful people who have promoted this program for a very long time. It is similar to Zen, Buddhism, and Zen practice. So it does have, it has historical antecedent. One of the early people in the mindfulness movement in the 70s became the general editor of Psychology Today. So I think the Vipassana community has been promoting the notion of mindfulness meditation for a long time. In the same way we were engaged in the practice of yoga in the late 60s. So I think this is really a nice thing in a way. And in another way, it's interesting to see how corporate culture in America is, manages to absorb and trivialize every meaningful activity that, we have ever sought out as an alternative to the trivial activities that we were engaged in, that we were brought up in.
Our mutual dear friend, Rick Carlson, who's since passed away, is a brilliant healthcare futurist, told me one time that what our culture does better than any culture in the history of the world is turn gold into tin. You have to wonder if we don't have another example of that.
I think, for instance, one of the things that we have really resisted on principle is the commercialization of our yoga and our spiritual practice. And one of the things that America has done really well is commercialize everything and monetize every kind of interaction between human beings. And I think that we have the most kind of nihilistic perspective of any country on the earth in general. I think that's what allows the rise of the Tea Party people, and fear. and a complete misunderstanding of history, the history of the United States. So, mindfulness in corporations tells us that the employees of the corporation, corporate America, people who work in corporate America, people who have been conditioned to, be disconnected from their workplace, disconnected from the people that they share their work with, and most importantly, disconnected from the people whom they are working to serve.
Right.
This corporate America is embarrassed about and finding great resistance to the amount of money that a corporation is making for supposedly for its shareholders, but definitely for its upper management, as opposed to the amount of money they are paying their general employees. Hospital corporations are discovering that doctors are deeply, stressed and generally disenchanted with their professional choices. And the problem, of course, so they want to introduce mindfulness meditation to train the doctors to be happy with the crap they're getting and to relieve themselves of the expectation that all of the hard work that they have invested in their careers and all of the responsibility that they bear professionally in the acting out of their careers is ever going to benefit them really financially. And I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great strategy. Let's, in the absence of a happy pill, where we just give everybody a pill and they become instantly happy with, their trivialized circumstance, let us teach them to be connected to their bodies and in control of their minds, and maybe that'll, make them happy enough that they'll stop complaining about the reality of their circumstance. Well, so let me sort out two things in this topic. The first thing is, it is absolutely, definitely true that there is enough abundance in the world for everyone to have a comfortable life. A life that, we were comfortable with as children growing up, which was not excessive in any way, nor was it deprived of anything. There's enough.
Well, I told you I spent the week in Cuba.
Right.
And I learned everybody has health care. They have clean water. Everybody's got a job. Everybody's got enough to eat. And they have nothing else. And they're the happiest people I've ever seen.
Right.
Because they have their family, their friends, their culture. And they're not.
Right.
So.
Constantly
Stimulated. Entertained.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the first issue is there is enough. And so I think we really need to consider, one of the main functions of government has always been to manage resource distribution. That's always been a function of government. From, the Persian Empire to the Roman Empire to, the American Empire.
Or the tribal village.
Yeah, it's always been, government has always been, yeah, it's true, always. And so when we hear about the quote, conservative position that less government is, the way to go, I think what we really have to hear in that is that the people who own the Tea Party and the Republican Party and whatever other parties they're having, are people who have a lot of resources that they don't want to do anything, anybody to do anything with. They want to hold on to their money at the expense of the welfare of everybody else in the country. And I don't really see anything much happening to counter that trend. You think that when we were at the end of our college career, Richard Nixon was president. And I remember Nixon becoming president because, you know, he was the governor of California while we were in college. I remember Nixon being president as the most depressing day of my public life. And
there was strong competition for the award.
Right.
Kennedy's assassination, Martin Luther King, right? Yeah.
So when Ronald Reagan became president about 8 or 10 years later, I thought, this is the most depressing day of my public life. But it turns out that President Obama is far to the right of Richard Nixon. And during Reagan's administration, however, he railed against big growth. Government spending rose significantly. So the whole move toward putting an end to the notion of democracy and reestablishing in the United States a solid oligarchy has been underway. You know, I mean, it was FDR who basically put an end to the oligarchists for a while, and now we have them back in control. So.
And you don't think mindfulness has the potential to turn that around?
No. Here's what I think mindfulness has the potential to do. I think that, in fact, the stresses that people live with are increasing. I think that, you know, the world is changing so dramatically that even in our lifetime, we're going to see some very huge shifts taking place in the way people live and where people live, how resources are distributed. And I would not be surprised at all to see a, you know, high level of violence accompanying all these dramatic changes that are about to take place. And I really believe that mindfulness, connectedness in your body, connectedness to your breath, you know, the ability to manage your stress, your frustration, your tensions, and your fears, and the understanding of the extraordinary resource that you were born with will bless the few people who actually engage in a real spiritual practice with the possibility of, you know, really growing and really benefiting in a deeply personal way, not in a financial or a social way, but in a deeply personal way from the experiences that humanity has laid out in front of them. So, you know, I have no criticism of mindfulness program at all. Mindfulness meditation, in my view, is a practice that arose out of early Buddhism. And even the Buddhists themselves have basically walked away from that a couple of thousand years ago with the emergence of first Mahayana Buddhism as superior to Vipassana or mindfulness, and then ultimately Vajrayana Buddhism, which transcended the two and brought it all together. And I think that mindfulness meditation is a wonderful place to start. I think personally my experience and my observation of the mindfulness movement over the last 45 years is that it's not an appropriate place to finish your inner work. It's a great place to start. It's not an appropriate place to finish.
Thank you. Beautifully summarized. I am always intrigued at what I learned after a very long time with this young man over here. So I'm really happy you all joined us. Thank you very much.